Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final episode of Season 2 of Thursday's Theology. My name is Pastor Jeff, and I am your host. And as I was preparing for this episode, I was reminded of a memory from when I was a teenager that didn't really sit too well with me. Now, growing up, I did this thing called Vacation Bible School. Now, what VBS is a summer day camp where we go and play games, we learn about Jesus, and we make some cool crafts. Now, I have fond memories of day camp, and I loved being a part of it as a camper. And when I got into middle school, I became a counselor, and I loved that part too. Now, I loved camp so much that I eventually became the camp intern and then went on to direct the entire camp itself. Now, the memory that didn't sit too well with me was during my first year as the camp intern. We did 3 sessions of camp, so we did 3 one-week sessions. And after the first week, an older person from the church asked me how the first week went. So I proceeded to tell them that it went great, that that particular week had been booked full, which was really, really encouraging to see. But it was their next question that caught me off guard and caused my stomach to churn. Now, his question was, how many kids accepted Jesus? Now, this question caught me off guard because I honestly didn't know. I didn't know the answer. I hadn't been keeping track of that. Now, when I told the older person this, they proceeded to tell me that I needed to know that information because it was vital to gauging the success of the ministry. Now, that didn't sit too well with me because it boiled down all of our hard work to mere numbers. It didn't matter how well the counseling staff did or if the kids had a good time. It was all about whether they had said the prayer to accept Jesus. Now, don't get me wrong. Sharing the gospel with kids is important, but what I'm talking about is when that life-changing moment is boiled down to a mere data point. Now, we had these kids for 1 week out of the year, and we gauged our success on whether or not they accepted Jesus at our camp, at our church, and on our time. Now, there was no follow-up. There was no continued effort to keep in touch. It was about using quote-unquote conversions as a factor in determining our success. Now, it was great that kids accepted Jesus, but when we have the mentality of a one-and-done gospel moment, then we miss the point of inviting people into a lifelong relationship with Jesus. The biggest reason that this particular memory didn't sit well with me is because it caused me to question how we went about sharing the gospel with kids. What I came to discover is that the toxic theology of one and done had made the entire program revolve around getting kids to accept Jesus and patting ourselves on the back for it. What this communicated to the kids is that we only cared about them for the week that we saw them, and then we could care less about them after camp was over. Now, where I'm going with this is that when we set that perception of the gospel, then we mislead kids into thinking that Jesus is only at camp, or that you don't have to really follow Jesus until you get to camp. It sets up an unhealthy view of what it means to follow Jesus in your everyday life. Again, to really drive the point home, anytime a child comes to know Jesus, that is worth celebrating. But when we use that life-changing moment as a measure of success, then we are making a mockery of their choice to become a believer. Choosing to follow Jesus is a lifelong commitment, not something you choose to do one day at camp and then never go back to. We have to be real and honest about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We have to be honest that it is going to require you to live your life differently. It is going to require you to take these young believers and begin the long process of discipleship. When we encounter the resurrected Christ, our lives forever change. Now, what it boils down to is that this toxic theology of a one-and-done gospel sets up an unhealthy expectation of what it means to be a true follower of Jesus. When we are only concerned with a person up until they say the prayer and accept Jesus, then we are neglecting the critical step of walking alongside that person for the rest of our days. A call to follow Jesus is a call to walk alongside other believers. There are no only children of God. For better or for worse, we have a multitude of younger siblings that we are called to nurture in the faith and walk alongside and disciple. That is a lifelong commitment. And that is it for this week's episode of Thursday's Theology. My name is Pastor Jeff, and believe it or not, that is a wrap for Season 2 of Thursday's Theology. I want to thank you all for joining me for these past 24 episodes. It has truly been a pleasure being able to share some theological insights with you. Now, as for Season 3, we will be back in a few months with a new game and a brand new series to kick things off. And once again, thank you all for joining me for Season 2 of Thursday's Theology. And remember, theology doesn't always have to be difficult. It is simply the study of who God is. Take care. We'll see you next season.